With inflation rising the cost of traveling, there has never been a better time to consider low-cost carriers such as AirAsia, which is why today's video is going to be rather special, as I'm going to be doing something that I have not only never done on this channel but also never in my life. And that is, I'm going to be flying with AirAsia on a long-haul flight from Sydney to Phnom Penh. And in this video, I'm going to be reviewing my entire experience from checking in, the condition of the cabin, the service, and even the food. I'm also going to be doing a price comparison between AirAsia and other airlines, as well as share some tips that I learned before and during my AirAsia flight that made my first flight experience with them surprisingly pleasant. My goal in this all is to help you decide if it's worthwhile booking your next flight with AirAsia. I have a great video for you today, so without further ado, let's get into it. First, let's talk price point. So I spent just under $1,000 for this return trip from Sydney to Phnom Penh, which by the way already takes into account that I paid an extra $117 to get the front row quiet zone seats for the long haul flight components from Sydney to Kuala Lumpur and back, and also another $136 extra for the 20 kilos luggage allowance. Whereas in comparison to Singapore Airlines, which is the airlines that I usually would fly with, the same return trip on the same dates would cost me around $1,600 US. And to make my research even more complete, I also did a search on Google Flights for all other flights around the same time window, and as you can see here, AirAsia still remains to be the cheapest flights available. And I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say, Steve, the tickets look cheap, but they cost about the same once you factor in all the add-ons. To an extent, that is true, but I prefer to think about it as AirAsia is more flexible. For example, you may not need 20 or 30 kilos of baggage allowance on the way there to your trip, but you may need the 20 or maybe even 30 kilos luggage allowance on the way back from your trip. No thanks to maybe some of the shopping that you might have done. Now, this is an area I think AirAsia excels in, as in this particular example, you can actually just pay for the extra luggage allowance on the way back from your trip, and therefore resulting in a lower price flight ticket, whereas most other airlines would already have that luggage allowance factored into the price. And yes, I did come across a few AirAsia check-in reviews when I was researching for my trip, with complaints specifically centered around being sprung with a high price when purchasing extra luggage during check-in. And that's why I would recommend for you to purchase all your extras, from additional luggage to special seats to your in-flight meals, when booking your flight, as that's going to work out a lot cheaper for you. I, for example, decided very early on that I was going to purchase my 20 kilos extra luggage allowance and also spring for the special front row seats. But that does lead quite nicely into hot topic number 2, which is checking in. So let's go check in. Okay, so I'm here at the AirAsia flight check-ins. Boarding begins around 3 hours before the flight's scheduled departure time. But I only came here early because I heard a lot about the AirAsia flight boarding queues. So I arrived 4 hours before check-in, and this was the queue situation about half an hour before check-in was set to open. And so if I was to give you my first piece of advice, it would be to get to your check-in counter 3 to 3.5 hours before your flight is scheduled to depart. But the good thing is, if you're already checked in, you just kind of go to the baggage drop queue, which is significantly shorter than the queue where people still need to check in. Check-in was relatively painless. I had my luggage in and all done in 20 minutes. And now it's time to fill in my water bottle before we board the flight. So I'm just here, we're about to board. I sprung another 70 Aussie dollars to get the premium seats, and it looks like it's worth it because they put me right in front of this queue, whereas I think the normal queue is that queue. And I honestly only did it because I wanted that bit of extra space, but it's pretty cool that this priority boarding thing came with it. Here we go. Let's go boarding. Here we are. 21G. And I don't know if it was because of all the negative reviews I read prior to my flight, but I was pleasantly surprised at how spacious the cabin was. The seats look relatively new, and there is even a decent amount of leg space even if you didn't spring for the front row seats like I did. The seats do incline as well. The only notable difference I noticed with this flight compared to all the other flights that I usually take is that there was no in-flight entertainment, but this wasn't really a concern concern for me though, as I already knew about it prior to booking my flight. And so I had pre-downloaded some shows on Netflix, some podcasts, and some Spotify playlists to keep me entertained throughout my flight. Which is, by the way, yet another example of how flexible AirAsia bookings can be to help you save, as all the customization power is with you. You get to choose which extras you need for your flight. Speaking of customization, I forgot to mention that I also pre-booked a meal, though if I'm being honest, I didn't do it because I necessarily needed one, as I usually bring my own snacks, but just so I can review it for the purpose of this video. After all, we should take all factors into consideration when reviewing a flight.
This is the grilled peri chicken with jollof rice. This is what it looks like.
Unsurprisingly, as their menu comprises of mainly Malaysian food, I ended up loving it. Whilst the presentation could do with a bit of work, the meal itself was delicious. I would even go as far as to say that this is better than some of the meals I've had on other airlines. This cost $4.80 US, by the way, which isn't too pricey in my opinion. I then settled in for the rest of my flight before
approximately 10 hours later,
I faced my first challenge with this trip when the plane landed at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Let me go back in time to explain this to you. The only issue with this is I found out that my luggage is not going to be tagged all the way through from Sydney to Phnom Penh. I would actually need to get my luggage out and then in again, and there's about a 3-hour time window between when my flight lands to when I get back on the flight to Phnom Penh, so fingers crossed.
Right, so I've just off-boarded my flight from Sydney to Kuala Lumpur. It's a pretty tight deadline, so let's go.
And I have to confess, I was initially very doubtful that I'll make the connection. After all, the time frame was pretty tight, but this process ended up being surprisingly straightforward. Here are 3 things I learned that will make this process more efficient for you if you do find yourself in this situation. 1, make sure you have already filled in a Malaysian arrival form. You can do this online prior to your trip. The form will ask for a Malaysian address even if you're just transiting, so just enter this address. 2, if you're from one of the eligible countries, you can skip the queue and exit using the e-gates, which is much quicker. I have, by the way, placed the links for the full list of e-gates eligible countries and the Malaysian arrival form in my description box for your ease of reference. And 3, if you're already checked in, you simply need to locate a check-in kiosk at the departure halls that look like this. Scan your passport for your boarding pass and luggage tag. You can even drop the luggage off via a self-service counter.
And here it is. What you want to do is you want to attach this to your luggage bag. Forward, go done. And then it'll just say, I'm processing your bag, and in goes the bag. Bye bag.
I got the entire thing done with 40 minutes to spare before my flight. My flight from Kuala Lumpur to Phnom Penh was a relatively short one at 2 hours. It was in a different aircraft than the one used for the long-haul flight, and before I knew it, I was in Phnom Penh. I had no issues with luggage collection, and just like that, I have now done 2 things for the first time in my life: fly with AirAsia and visit Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Overall, as someone who has never flown AirAsia before, I was honestly surprised by my entire experience. Now, is it a premium airline experience? No, you are flying with a budget carrier after all. But it surprisingly takes off a lot of the boxes of things that you would consider whether you're flying with a budget carrier or not. First, the price was affordable. Secondly, the customer service that I got from point to point, which is the check-in all the way till when I collected my luggage, was pleasant and tip-top. And thirdly, the cabin of both the aircrafts I've flown in were in good condition, clean, with plenty of space. It is really not hard to see why they've been voted as the world's best low-cost airline by Star Trek for 15 years in a row. And so I would definitely fly them again. In fact, I found out during this trip that they also have a premium flatbed section, and I'm low-key curious to try it out. But I want to know if any of you have tried out their premium flatbed experience and what do you think. But also, if you haven't, let me know if you want to see a video on that. I'm Steve, by the way, and I love making travel content just like this one that you're watching here to help you plan your trip to cities around the world more effectively. Definitely like, comment, and subscribe if you found value in this video, as it really does help at appeasing those YouTube algorithm gods, but more importantly, it just makes my day as a content creator. I do hope that you have a fantastic day ahead, or that you've already had a good day. As always, I will see you very soon in the next video. Ciao!